A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Let's turn our attention to something we don't always think very deeply about. We always assume that the Christian ministries that we're a part of or that we support have their act together, are doing everything by the book and doing everything with integrity. But there are some things that can sometimes sideline or take off on a tangent various Christian organisations. Sometimes we talk about being mission true, holding to the mission which is aligned with the mission of God. And when we vary from that, sometimes we call that mission drift. Well, Bill Muehlenberg has been giving some thoughts to mission drift this past week. He's written an article called Evangelical Mission Drift. Hey, Bill, a special welcome back to 2020.
Great to be back with you, Neil.
Bill, mission drift, evangelical mission drift. And, we're not ignorant, are we? Just because you have a Christian organisation doesn't mean it will always hold true to its original foundations. And sometimes things tend to drift, even into potential corruption. What's got you thinking about it?
Well, a number of things. Just this past week, we've learned about, one leading Protestant church, right? The Anglican Church in the UK. A new Archbishop of Canterbury just appointed a female, which has got some concern to begin with, but pro-homosexual, pro-abortion. Some of the original early Anglican divines and theologians and fathers, even think of more recent ones, James Packer. They'd be kind of shocked and rolling in their graves to know what's happening with an entire denomination. But it happens not just there, with parachurch groups, Christian aid organizations, charities, so many faith-based groups. Well, even you think of the Salvation Army, right? Very strongly evangelical under William Booth and Catherine Booth. Today, often more and more, some of that gospel message is kind of disappearing, and it's kind of just another social help group. So in that sense, what are you going to do except keep praying that they stay true to their calling, whether a church, a denomination, parachurch group. So, a lot of stuff coming out, and including a couple of new books and articles I discuss as well in this piece.
Bill, no doubt any Christian church or Christian-based organisation starts off with all the best intentions, and as things expand, working with government seems like a no-brainer because government funding can really intensify your capacity to be able to do the ministry that you started out doing. But governments can go woke. Governments can change the way they think ideologically about things, which can be counter-Christian. Is this part of the problem, you think? Christian organisations aligning with government money?
Yeah, well, that sadly is a big part of it. In fact, some of your listeners might recall a book from 2014 called Mission Drift, which did look at a whole bunch of groups and talked about how slowly, over time, often without being noticed, groups that started off strong with a great Christian foundation slowly drifted away. And in that book, they do mention, money is often a big part of it. If you get government funding, well, guess what? You got to start towing the line with the state. I wouldn't want to pick on something like the Salvation Army. There's still plenty of great salvos out there doing great work, strong evangelicals, but not all. And recall even 20 years ago here in Victoria, they were part of a group, a bunch of pro-family, pro-faith groups. But when it came around to recognizing homosexuality, homosexual marriage, sadly, they and some others pulled out. Why? Well, they're getting government funding. And you can't be too critical of the state if they're paying for so much of your work. So there's two options. You either start trusting God and believe He can provide the funding, or you may well have to start compromising, capitulating to keep that money coming, and therefore start moving away, drifting away from your original Christian charter.
You've got a Christian charter, you're a Christian organisation, you've been founded on wonderful foundations, and things began to drift when you started to receive government funding. And when you're receiving government funding, it's a little bit like people on the payroll, a bit like public servants. They're working for the government. And what you seem to be saying here is that there needs to be a little caution around the weakening of your resolve about how you stay mission true. You've got to pay attention to that, haven't you?
Absolutely. And again, history just shows this happening time and time again. We could speak of Anglicans in America who morphed into the Episcopalian Church, right? They are now probably the most liberal, leftist, mainline denomination in America. So again, strong Anglican roots going back centuries, now pretty much lost in America. And one author who's looked especially at evangelical churches and parachurch groups has been Megan Basham. Last year, I wrote a number of articles on her book, Shepherds for Sale. Same message, right? Church leaders, shepherds, pastors, mission organization leaders all drifting, partly because of finance and money. And just recently, she came out with another article looking carefully at some of this. Most of your listeners, again, would know about something like Christianity Today, a very famous evangelical magazine started by Billy Graham back in 1956. But many readers over the recent years have noticed a leftward drift there, where things like even homosexuality is being watered down, abortion being watered down. In fact, even some of the editorials in the last few U.S. elections saying, well, actually, we think as evangelicals, Kamala Harris would be better to run America than Donald Trump. Now, regardless of your views of either one, the idea that any kind of evangelical would be happy with the radical far left, agenda items of Biden, Obama, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, just the most hardcore left, really anti-Christian agenda. So for a major Christian magazine to start saying, well, we think you should go with Kamala. So a lot of people are really getting quite concerned. And Basham just the other day came out with a piece noting that one foundation gave Christianity Today the other year $1 million, but it's a very pro-homosexual and pro-abortion foundation. So why is Christianity Today taking big money, and does that get reflected then in their weakening positions on these and other issues? So Megan Basham's been sounding the alarm about where some of these once great evangelical outfits are now at. And you just have to ask, well, is nobody, immune or exempt from this? Christianity Today, Billy Graham, what a great beginnings. But now, we can talk about Wheaton College. I was there in Chicago, one of the great evangelical schools, same thing. A lot of pretty hardcore left professors now being appointed, pushing some pretty radical things. So, yeah, it seems it can happen anywhere without a whole lot of prayer, a lot of care, and a lot of seeking the Lord. Are we still where we meant to be, or are we drifting?
You're making governments look good, Bill. Governments try to deliver welfare services. They find that churches are reliable through their charities to be able to meet those needs. But charities, they transition leadership, and so therefore towing the line, going with the regulations, can change to the ideological position of government. But you've taken it another step deeper here. Ideologically driven organisations giving money to Christian organisations, and then they take control of the narrative. So when you've got the pro-abortion, the same-sex marriage, those sorts of things, they become very significant. You've got to be so careful. Leadership is so important here.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just about every evangelical initiative you can think of. I mean, years ago already, I read that just about every major evangelical Christian publishing house, right? Think of Baker, Zondervan, Erdman's, I think even IVP. Everyone has since been bought out by bigger secular book companies. So, how much is that going to impact what evangelical publishers are going to do, the books they promote or the books they don't promote? So it's just so many areas where, again, whether it's money or for whatever reason, this drift starts taking place to be accepted by the world and, be a friend of the world and, do well. Well, you could sell a lot of books if that's the route you want to take, but then you have to stop calling yourself, say, an evangelical book publisher or evangelical magazine or evangelical charity, right? All these groups originally knew to help people. You just want to not only give them, right, food and shelter, so they set up soup kitchens and all these great city missions in places like Chicago and so on, but they knew they had to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. Just feeding an empty stomach and getting clothes on a person, most of these Christian charities knew the real deal is to give them the hope of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So if you start drifting away from that, well, again, plenty of pagan and secular outfits out there doing it. So what's the point of some of these older charities that they no longer have their Christian emphasis?
So when you've got secular involvement, whether it's government or whether it's even secular philanthropists, and, that generosity sounds very good until it controls the narrative of how the Christian company needs to change to be more secular. Hey, what's the answer here, Bill? What have you gleaned from some of your reading and writing this past week? How do you maintain mission true status as a Christian organisation and resist this idea of drifting?
Yeah, well, something I've been saying for years now, and it's a big part of it, a practical thing that we can and should address, and that is if money is so often leading the way in terms of mission drift, well, maybe it would be a good idea to get back to actually trusting God, right? Depending on Him for the finances. I know it's tough. You got a big organization. You might employ thousands of people and you're doing all this stuff. You get used to either getting donations from groups who may not be Christian or getting government funding, which is becoming increasingly unchristian, if not anti-Christian. Well, you can keep going down that road, or you can do the really radical thing and say, hey, am I really a Christian leading the Christian outfit, and should we actually trust God? Even that simple stuff like we see in Matthew 6, right? The birds in the air, they're being looked after, so don't worry about what you're going to eat. First, the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these other things will be added to you. And I think, whoever it is, whether it's Salvation Army, Episcopalian Church, Christianity Today, you name it, if they forget these basic truths that when we put God first, He is able to meet our needs, even if you're a big organization doing a lot of stuff, God can help. He can raise up the funding. You don't have to rely on the secular state or secular philanthropists. So, it's a call to make. It's a choice to make. Who are you going to serve? Who are you going to put your trust in? Who are you going to depend upon? And it never ends well when you depend more on secular governments or outfits than you do on the Lord Himself.
It seems to me it's a choice as a leader of an organisation that you need to make early rather than try and harness the horse once it's bolted, because turning things back's not so easy as getting things right first time. And as you know, I was writing about this some years ago and wrote that book, Public Christians in a Secular Age, which was really about making the mission of God part of your primary purpose and resisting the idea of drifting from those foundations. Well, for listeners, you might want to read some more about what Bill has been writing. One of his latest articles here is called Evangelical Mission Drift, and mentions some of the organisations that got a mentioned in our conversation, and you might be interested in some of those. Christianity Today and some of the organisations you might want to do a little more research into to find out if they truly have drifted from their original mission. So you can find that article, Evangelical Mission Drift, at billmuehlenberg.com, or you can simply Google Culture Watch, one word. Hey, Bill, always good getting your insights. Thanks so much for those today on 2020.
Many thanks again.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.